When a homeless kid shouted, "Don't eat that," no one expected what would happen next. The park café was a magnet for Thesides' elite, tucked between rows of manicured trees and the hum of a nearby fountain. It was midday, and the café buzzed with life waiters. In crisp uniforms, weaved gracefully between tables, balancing trays of artisan disassoned freshly brewed coffee, the air smelled of warm bread and the faint sweetness of blooming flowers. But for one man, none of this seemed remarkable at a prime table. In the center sat Bernard Green, a name synonymous with power and wealth. He had built his empire from scratch, starting with real estate in his 20s and expanding into ventures that few could dream of at 72. He carried himself with confidence of someone who owned not just his world, but perhaps the world's very own around him. His sharp suit and gold-rimmed glasses reflected a life of opulence, yet as he glanced at the minuous movements, were slow, almost hesitant opposite. Him sat Marissa Hismock, younger, wife, a woman who seemed to plucked straight out of a magazine cover hair. Jet black hair framed a face that was impossibly polished, her bright red lipstick carefully applied every inch. Affer screamed elegance, but her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She twirled a diamond bracelet on her wrist absent-mindedly. He was small for his Agikki's oversized hoodie hanging loosely on his thin frame. His dark eyes darted frantically to table, scanning plates and pockets, looking for an opportunity. His name was Malik. Though no one in the cafe knew him, his face was familiar on this street, a kid with nowhere to go, always on the outskirts of conversation. And the edges of concern. Bernard glanced at his watch. "You're distracted again," he said, his voice calm but pointed. Marissa looked up and smiled thaw. There was no warmth in it. "I'm right here," she replied sweetly, reaching across the table to place her hand on his. "You know how much I enjoy the lunches." Malik's stomach growled. He moved closer, his footsteps almost silent as he leaned against the patio railing. High size landed on Bernard's table. It wastes kind of meal he hadn't seen up close in months. A pristine white bowl of soup, flanked by fresh bread and a glass of sparkling water, but then something unused. Walhopond, as Bernard adjusted his glass of sand, picked up his phone. Marissa's hand slipped into her designer handbag. Malik saw her fingers close around a small vial. She twisted it open with a casual flick, tilting her hand ever so slightly over the steaming bowl. The liquid blended with the soup in an instantacy, peering like it had never been there. Malik's breath caught. He froze, watching her stir the soup with the spoon, her expression enchanged. Then she leaned closer to Bernard, her voice low but just audibly. "No, after all the trouble I've gone through, you won't ruin this, no." The boy blinked, unsure of what Huhud just witnessed was this real. Could a woman looked so perfect sitting in a placesso, polished, really be doing what he thought? But Malik couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Malik's heart pounded in his chest as he crouched lower behind the railing. Sure, what he'd just seen, but the way the woman's voice carried those cold words, it sent a shiver through him. He clenched his fists, his nails digging into his palms. No one else had noticed it. No one else had been paying attention. It was just him. The faint growl in his stomach pulled him back to reality. Booth's eyes remained fixed on the couple. Bernard looked tired, distracted, his spoon hovering over the bowl as he checked his phone. Marissa was all charm and poise again, her smile bright, her hand restinging her chin as if she hadn't just whispered something chilling moments ago. Malik could feel the weight of Theodosian pressing down on him. His instinct screamed to walk away. Why get involved? Who would believe a kid like him, a boy in a threadbare hoodie standing at the edges of a world he wouldn't welcome in? He swallowed hard, glancing around at the other patrons' laughter, chatter, the clinking of glasses. No one cared. No one even noticed him. Booth's gaze returned to Bernard's spoon, now dipping into the soup. Malik felt his chest tighten. It wasn't just his imagination. He had seen her pour something into it. He knew what would happen if the old man took a bite. His thoughts raced. He didn't know this man, but that didn't matter. Wrong was wrong. The moment stretched endlessly, and then, without thinking, Malik pushed himself off the railing and marched straight to the table. His legs felt liquid, but his feet didn't stop. His voice cracked as he shouted, "Don't eat that!" Heads turned. Conversation stopped mid. The clatter of a dropped fork echoed across the cafe. Bernard froze, his spoon inches from his lips, his wide eyes locking on to the boy. Marissa whipped her head around, her expression hardening. "What did you just say?" she demanded, her voice sharp and cut through glass. Malik didn't falter. His voice was shaky, but loud enough for everyone to hear. She put something in your food. I saw her. Don't eat. Heat gasps rippled through the cafe as a patron turned toward the scene. The silence that followed was suffocating. Malik stood his ground, his chest heaving as adrenaline seethed through him. Bernard blinked, glancing between Theboy and his wife. What is he talking about? Marissa's tone was calm, but his hand trembled as he set the spoon down. Unbeatable. Marissa's composure snapped like a rubber band stretched too thin. She shot at her feet, her chair scraping loudly against the stone floor. You little liar, she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. How dare you accuse him of something so vile? Who even let you hear the words? Stung, but Malik did it back down. His eyes remained locked on Bernard's, desperate to make him see the truth. I saw her. She poured something Ginto. Your soup when you weren't looking, said his voice steadying. As he spoke, you can smell it. If you don't believe me. Bernard's face paled as he turned toward his wife, his eyes narrowing. Marissa, what's going on? Hissed, his voice quiet but firm. She scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. He's just trying to cause trouble. Look at him, Ham. Probably just wants money or food. She spat the words out like they were poison themselves, her gaze flicking to Malik with open disdain, but the boy didn't waver. He stepped closer to the table, his fists clenched. I'm not lying, he said firmly, his voice rising. She doesn't want you, Tuckno. But I saw everything. Bernard's hand lingered over the bowl, torn between disbelief and thennowing doubt creeping into his mind. Boot something in the boy's tone made him hesitate. The air around the table seemed to thicken. The once lively cafe, now airily silent. All eyes were locked on the unfolding drama, their meals forgotten. Bernard leaned back slightly, in his chair, studying the boy with a scrutinizing gaze. His face bore the marks of a man used to people playing games with him, trying to take advantage of his wealth. But this was different. The boy didn't flinch, didn't look away. Malik, is it Bernard? Asked, his voice steady, though a trace of suspicion lingered. The boy nodded. Yes, I'm telling truth. Please don't eat it, he said, his voice soft but insistent. Marissa let out a harsh laugh, crossing her arms. Ass stared Malik down. This is absurd, she snapped, her tone icy. Heck, just some street kid looking for attention. Are you really going to entertain this nonsense, Bernard? But Bernard didn't answer her instead. He picked up the spoon again, this time holding it closer to his face. His hand trembled slightly. Not from fear, but from the quiet storm brewing within him. Marissa, he said slowly, his eyes meeting hers. You heard him. What exactly is going in here? Marissa's mask of poise cracked further, her lips pressing into a thin line. I can't believe you're even asking men that. It's insulting. She turned to the growing crowd, her voice rising. Hunsling, look at him. He probably doesn't even know who you are. Ah, why would you trust him? Over him, the weight of her words hung in fear, but they didn't have the effect hoped for. The crowd was murmuring no, their eyes darting between the three of them. Whispers floated through the air. Did she really do it? Look at her. She's nervous. That boy doesn't look like he's making this up. The murmurs only fueled Marissa's fury. She slammed her hands on the table, her polished demeanor. Good enough of this, Bernard. Eat your damn soup and let's go, she hissed, her voice trembling with rage. But Malik wasn't backing down. He took another step forward, his fists clenched. Won't believe me? Then call someone to test it, he said, his voice rising with urgency. Eurichio've got lawyers, doctors, people who can figure it out. But don't eat it. If who do you'll regret it. Bernard's jaw tightened as he turned it back to the bowl. The spoon was still in his hand, but he didn't lift it to his lips. His eyes, tired and calculating, shift to his wife. Marissa, he said, his voice low. You've been acting strange for weeks. Now this, her face flushed, and she stumbled over her words. I don't know what you're talking about. You can't seriously think I'd Puzam. Bernard finished for her, his tonerizer sharp. The crowd gasped, audible whispers growing louder. Malik stood firm, his gazoon wavering. He could feel his heart pounding. He wouldn't let it show. Had done what he could. Now it was up to Bernard to make the next move. Marissa straightened up, her expression hardening into something cold and unfamiliar. This is ridiculous. Don't they've to sit here and listen to this now, she said, grabbing her handbag before she could leave. Bernard Shen shot out, gripping her wrist with surprising strength for a man his age. Not going anywhere, he said firmly. Not until we get to the bottom of this. The waiter, who had been frozen In place finally spoke up, "Sir, should I calf?" Police the question sent a ripple through the cafe, and for the first time Marissa looked genuinely panicked. Shook her head violently. "Don't you dare this? Is just a misunderstanding, Bernard, you can't serious." But Bernard raised his hand, silencing her. "Yes," he said, addressing Theowaiter without looking away. From Marissa called them, Malik felt a surge of relief, but it was fleeting. The truth wasn't out yet, and the tension was far from over. The cafe held its collective breath. As the waiter hurried inside Tomac, the call Bernard let go of Marissa's wrist. His eyes never leaving hers. The once polished charm she wore so effortlessly was now unraveling. Replaced by a growing sense of desperation. She glanced around, her lips but no sound coming out, as though searching for an escape. Meanwhile, Malik stood a few steps back, his hands shaking slightly. He'd done all he could, but Noah felt the weight of doubt creeping in. What if the man didn't believe him? After all, what if she managed to torque her way out of this? He clenched his fists, forcing himself to stay rooted in place. "Malik," Bernard said suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension. "You saw her put something in tho soup. Can you describe it?" The boy nodded quickly. Stepping forward, it was a small bottle like one you'd use for medicine. Clear liquid. Shep poured it in when you were looking at your phone, then stirred it. "I swear I saw it." Bernard's face tightened. He turned to Marissa, who was already shaking her head. "This is absurd. Hune lying. Why would Ebot?" Bernard cut her off. "Why would he Luhat? Could he possibly gain from this?" The crowd murmured again, and the sound of sirens in the distance added to the charjat. Marcia's eyes darted towards Soand. For a split second, her carefully crafted facade slipped completely. She looked cornered. Then, as if grasping at straws, rounded on Malik. "You've been spying on us, haven't you? Trying to cause a trouble because you're jealous of people. Whoa. Actually have a something." The words hit Malik like a slap. But he stood his ground. "I'm not jealous," he said firmly. "I saw what I saw, and I couldn't just stand there and let you hurt him." Sirens grew louder, and soon Tupala's officers entered the cafe. Their room seemed to shrink. As they approached the table, their hands resting on their belts. "What's going on here?" one of them asked, his tone neutral but authoritative. Bernard stood his towering frame, still commanding respect. "Despite his officers, I need you to take a look at this," he said, gesturing toward the bowl of soup. "This boy claims my wife poisoned it." Officers exchanged glances, their expressions carefully blank. One of them leaned down, sniffing the bowl. Cautiously Thawne turned to Marissa. "Ma'am, do you have anything to say about this?" Her face turned crimson. "This is ridiculous. He's just a street kid trying to make trouble." Bernajur really going to let this nonsense go this far? But the officer wasn't buying her deflection. "Weck, need to test the content," she said. Reaching for the bowl, no, Marissa snapped, her voice rising. The outburst drew even more attention, and her sudden panic only made her look guiltier. The officer paused, narrowing his eyes. "Ma'am, is there something you'd like to tell us before we proceed?" Marissa hesitated, her chest rising and falling rapidly. She looked at Bernard, then at the officers, her hands trembling as she clutched her handbag. Finally, her resolve crumbled fine. She spat, her voice low, but dripping with venom. Living in his shadow, tired of his control over everything, he was never supposed to make it past this year. She stopped abruptly, realizing too late that she'd said too much. The cafe erupted in gasps, some patrons pulling out their phones to record. Ticini Bernard's face went pale as the weight of her confession hit him like a truck. The officer stepped forward, his expression grim. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for attempted murder. Please put your hands where I can see them." Marissa's composure shattered completely. She screamed, trying to wriggle free as they secured her hands behind her back. "You don't understand. I deserved everything he had, everything," she shouted as they led her away, her voice echoing through the stunned cafe. Bernard sank back into his chair, his hand trembling as he pushed the soup away. For a moment, he said nothing, his face a mask of disbelief and betrayal. Then his eyes found Malik, who stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. But as Bernard's gaze softened, a flicker of gratitude replaced the anger in his. Malik hadn't just saved his life, he'd revealed a truth Bernard would have never seen coming. The cafe slowly returned to a low hum of whispers and murmurs as the officers escorted Maris out, her protests fading into the distance. Patrons exchanged wide, still reeling from what they had just witnessed. Some looked at Bernard with pity, others with curiosity, but Malik didn't move. He stood rooted to the spot, unsure if he was slobbed to stay or slip. Awake-quietly, Bernard turned to the boy. His foes, still pale. But his eyes now steady. Moloch, he said softly, gesturing to Theseid across from him. Sit. Moloch hesitated, glancing around at the onlookers, but Bernard's voice carried a weight that made him obey. Slowly he sank into Theker. His shoulder stints. You saved my life, Bernard, said his voice, low but firm. I don't know how I can ever repay you. Moloch fidgeted, his hands gripping the edge of the table. I couldn't let it happen, he said quietly. I couldn't just watch and say nothing. Bernard nodded, his gaze distant. A moment, as if replaying the interior deal in his mind. Most people would have, he said after a pause. They would have turned the other way, pretended they didn't see, but you didn't. That took courage, boy. Moloch shrugged, his voice barely above a whisper. Guess I don't like seeing people get hurt, that's all. Bernard leaned back, studying the boy for his first time. He seemed to really see him, not just as a scrappy kid on the streets, but as someone with a story. Asol, how long have you been out here? The question caught Moloch off guard. He looked away, his voice tinged. It's with him. Bernard frowned, but didn't press. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a sleek black phone. Wait, Harij said, standing and stepping aside. Tomek. A call. Moloch watched him, unsure of what to do. His heart pounded with anxiety. Was Aang trouble? Now, was Bernard going to call Simeon to have him removed? But when Bernard returned, his expression was, Kelma Moskand help is on the way, he said. Simply help? Moloch asked, his brew froing. Bernard nodded. I called Simeon. I trust they'll make sure ya have a place to sleep tonight, somewhere safe, and if you'll let me. I'd like to do more than that. The boy's eyes widened at you. Don't have to do that, he said quickly, his voice defensive. I didn't do this for money or anything. Bernard smiled faintly. I know, that's why I want to help you. Did something most people wouldn't have. And trust me, Moloch, if the world had more people like you, it would be a much better place for... The first time in a long while, Moloch felt a warmth he couldn't quite describe. He looked down, unsure of what to say. The cafe patrons began to disperse, but the weight of what had happened lingered in the air. Bernard picked up his glass of water, taking a long sip before speaking. Goon, sometimes life gives us the chanchetto change. Someone else's story. I can help changers. The boy glanced up at him, his dark eyes glistening with something he had allowed himself to feel in earshot. As the two sat in silence, the sun continued its arc across the sky, casting long shadows across the Thikif. The lesson wasn't lost on any. Ono had witnessed the event. Courageously, always wear a suit, and kindistos always come from filthy. Sometimes it's the people we overlook who have the greatest strength of all in the end. Moloch's bravery did I just save a life. It reminded everyone in Thu Cafe of the power of standing up for what's right, no matter the odds. If this story moved you, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and join us for more tales of courage, truth, and redemption. Share this video with someone you might need a reminder that even small actions can create life-changing impacts.